Sorry that my camera in my laptop is not working properly. So I have to speak like the Meghnath. So you can hear me, but you cannot see me. So just listen to me and watch my slides. I want this next 40 to 50 minutes will be interactive. I will ask few of our PGs to unmute and ask few of the questions regarding this presentation of status epilepticus.
কোশ্চেন আর হয় না তুই আস্তে আস্তে নিজেই
So the first description about the status epilepticus we found in the books of ancient Mesopotamia, almost 2,500 years ago. And before the terminology of status epilepticus and before the medical description of the status epilepticus, we got it from few of the old English literature. So it has been described as his neck turns left, his hands and feet are tense, and his eyes wide open, and from his mouth froth is flowing without having any consciousness. So this quote is almost 500 years ago. And if you follow this quote, this is not uncommon in present the scenario when we got a case of status epilepticus. Status epilepticus is possibly the commonest pediatric emergency that we deal in our accident and emergency department, has an incidence of 17 to 23 per 1 lakh per year and a case fatality of around 3%. Mind it that the worldwide pandemic COVID had a case fatality of 3 to 5% all over the world, and status epilepticus is also a case fatality of around 3%. So it's not at all negligible. Here you can see the evolution of the definition of the status epilepticus depending on the duration. The first definition has been made on 1981. The seminal paper of classification of status epilepticus proposed a 60 minutes of duration of seizure. Then we can call it a status epilepticus. Then after 12 years, the 60 minutes has been reduced to 30 minutes. And in the seminal paper of guidelines for epidemiological studies on epilepsy, proposed 30 minutes as definition. Because they thought that if the seizure continued beyond 30 minutes, it will cause the irreversible damage of the brain. And this 30 minutes of theoretical discussion is still there even in 2020. In 1993, American Epilepsy Society proposed a 10 minutes as definition because they told if the seizure cannot be terminated automatically within the 5 or 10 minutes, it is unlikely to be terminated even in 30 minutes if no active intervention has been made. And in 1999, the seminal paper, It's Time to Revise the Definition of Status Epilepticus, proposed the 5 minutes as definition of convulsive status epilepticus. This is called an operational definition. So in a sum up, 5 minutes in practical and operational definition, 30 minutes as theoretical definition. Here the important definitions are there. Status epilepticus is a seizure lasting more than 30 minutes or recurrent seizure for more than 30 minutes, during which the patient does not regain consciousness. Single seizure more than 30 minutes or repeated seizure, a duration of more than 30 minutes where there was no consciousness has been regained. As I told, the operational definition, generalized convulsive status epilepticus in adults and older children, more than 5-year-old, refers to more than 5 minutes of continuous seizure or 2 or more discrete seizure between which there is incomplete recovery of consciousness. So if we have a 2 seizures, each and every 2 or 3 minutes of duration and a gap of 10 minutes, but sensorium was altered in the gap of 10 minutes, it is also called as status epilepticus. Then coming to the second stage is a refractory status epilepticus, or the seizure persists despite the administration of 2 appropriate anticonvulsant and acceptable doses with a minimum duration of status of 60 minutes. And suprarefractory status epilepticus that continues beyond 24 hours or more after the onset of anesthesia, including those cases in which the status epilepticus recurs on the reduction or withdrawal of the anesthesia, specifically the high-dose midazolam infusion. But recently, the definition of refractory status epilepticus had been changed a bit. What had been told that status epilepticus persisting despite sufficient dose of benzodiazepine and at least one anti-epileptic drug, irrespective of the time. The 60 minutes time frame is not there. If a seizure is coming to your A&E and you are not able to control the seizure, even after 2 doses of benzo and 1 doses of non-benzo AED, irrespective of the time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it have to be defined as refractory status epilepticus. So that you should not wait for 60 minutes to do further active interventions. So let us go to a case. A 6-year-old boy came to A&E with the complaints of low-grade undocumented fever for last 4 days, convulsion for 1 day, and altered sensorium for the same duration. He was admitted in an outside local hospital, received IV ceftriaxone, IV phenytoin, but convulsion was not controlled. Referred to our hospital for further management. On arrival to A&E, he was in active seizure. Saturation was 88% in room air, 96% in 2 liters of oxygen with the face mask. Blood pressure was 96 by 70 millimeter of mercury. PP was bilaterally equally reacting to light. He was tachycardic. Heart rate was 144 per minute. Temperature was 100.4 degree per Fahrenheit. All concerning IV cannula is there. So what should be your first medication to control the seizure? The first question is that what should be the first medication to control the seizure? Because it's the first time that you have encountered this patient. So before controlling the seizure, you have to do 2 things. That you have to do the traditionally ABC, airway breathing circulation. You have to ensure the airway. Few of the times the airway is not maintainable. You have to maintain the airway either by a gentle maneuver. Sometimes an nasopharyngeal airway is effective. Secretion, you have to suck the secretion. You have to keep the patient on recovery position, left lateral or right lateral position. You have to ensure the breathing. How is the breathing? Irregular, regular, tachypneic, bradypneic, jerky, everything. If you see the breathing is a bit altered, saturation is low, as in our index case, you have to keep the patient oxygen. Definitely, you have to evaluate the circulations, the CRT, the pulse, the blood pressure. If the circulation is impaired, you have to give a fluid bolus. And definitely, you have to do 2 basic investigations: a capillary blood glucose and an arterial blood gas or a capillary blood gas. This too will give you lots of informations whether the patient is hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic, because you have to identify if there is any correctable cause of the seizure. A blood gas will tell about the base deficit, about the circulatory status, about the ionized calcium as well as the sodium. If you see the ionized calcium in less than 1 or 0.9, you have to give it a calcium gluconate bolus slowly with ECG monitoring. If the sodium is less than 130, you can give a 3% saline sodium, 3 ml per kg. So you have to do side by side 2 things. You have to do the traditional ABC, CVG and ABG, as well as you have to control the seizure. So there is no doubt that if you encounter the seizure for the first time, you have to give a benzodiazepine. There is no doubt about that. So what are the benzodiazepines available? You have in our hands IV lorazepam, midazolam and diazepam. If the patient had a functional IV cannula, like in our index case, it's preferable to go directly for IV, either IV lorazepam or midazolam. Both are equally efficacious, but midazolam has a short acting than lorazepam. Lorazepam has a prolonged acting. Preferably, we should avoid IV diazepam because though the onset of action is the same, the chance of respiratory depression is more. If the kid do not have a functional IV cannula and you feel the IV cannulation is difficult, you can jolly well go for a buccal, nasal or IM midazolam. In several studies, it showed that buccal, nasal or IM midazolam is as efficacious as IV midazolam and it will take the same time to terminate the seizure. So do not wasting your time to do IV cannulation here and there. Directly go for a buccal, nasal or IM midazolam. Nasal midazolam is now easily available. It's a spray form and you can give it, works well. Now in our PG time, when the nasal midazolam was not available, we used to give the rectal diazepam. But the rectal absorption is erratic, it's out of the fashion now. So in a nutshell, if you have an IV cannula, you give a lorazepam or midazolam. Lorazepam is preferable because of longer duration of action. If not available, midazolam. If IV cannula is not there, you give a nasal spray, midazolam. The benzo can control the seizure in up to 80% of patients. And all benzodiazepine work by potentiating the neuroinhibitory effect of gamma aminobutyric acid. and no difference has been found in time to seizure variation when comparing intravenous route with non-intravenous routes of benzodiazepine administration. Why so? Because the time scale has been counted from the time when you initiate the action. So you need at least 30 to 40 seconds to do IV cannula. Then you have to draw the midazolam. Then you have to push the midazolam. Then you have to flush the midazolam. Then this IV midazolam will take time to action. On the other hand, the nasal midazolam is available readily prepared. You just give the nasal midazolam. So it will take the 2 times that from preparation of IV midazolam to give IV cannula and nasal midazolam, there is no time difference. But if the IV cannula is there, then IV midazolam is easily acting and rapidly acting than nasal midazolam. So, based on available data, midazolam via the intravenous, buccal or intranasal or intramuscular routes, or lorazepam or diazepam via the intravenous route are equally acceptable choices for the first dose of benzo, depending upon the resources available to the clinician or caregiver at the time. Whereas second dose is required, any of these agents given an intravenous or intraosseous is ideal. If you give a first dose, benzo is a nasal or buccal or IM, preferably before giving the second dose, you should have an intravenous or intraosseous line should be there. But any of the above delivery options remains reasonable. We would advocate against the rectal drug delivery, as I told earlier, in status epilepticus, if any other option is available, given the slower time to onset or decrease social acceptability. And definitely in the pre-hospital setting or out-hospital setting, non-IV routes are preferable during the transit or during the school. So after 5 minutes, seizure continued after the first dose of benzo. So next protocol wise, you have to give a second dose of benzo. If the first dose was IV, definitely second dose must be IV. If the first dose was non-IV, you have to pursue that for the second dose must be IV. And after this time, if the seizure has not been controlled, then the patient must be transferred to the ICU settings, PICU or in SDU setting. So even if the second dose of the benzo in the 5 minutes, seizure has continued. So we have shifted the patient to PICU. So what should be the next drug of choice? So two benzo failed, adequate dose, adequate route. What should be the next drug of choice? So here lies the tussle between phenytoin or fosphenytoin versus IV levetiracetam, IV RV valproate. So traditionally, why you used to do that? If neonates are very smaller kids, less than 2 months or 3 months, you load with phenobarb. If above, you load with phenytoin or fosphenytoin, phenytoin equivalent. But recently, the choice has been shifted from phenytoin to levetiracetam to sodium valproate. Now, at this moment, you have to notice whether this patient is a known case of epilepsy or not, whether this patient is already taking some anti-epileptic drug or not. If it is a virgin case of seizure or epilepsy, then any one will be applicable. If it is a known case of seizure disorder, then try to load with the drugs on which the patient was there previously. Most of the time, the patient was in levetiracetam or sodium valproate because you try not to usually avoid fosphenytoin for a prolonged period of time. If it's not, then anything is available. So there are 3 big studies are there. It is the concept study. It compares the efficacy of 20 milligram per kg of phenytoin with 40 milligram per kg of lev. And then the Eclipse study comparing the phenytoin and lev in the same dose, and the ESET study. The 3 arms, 20 milligram per kg of fosphenytoin, 40 milligram per kg of val, and 60 milligram per kg of lev. And all these studies showed that efficacy-wise, fosphenytoin as well as levetiracetam as well as a valproate is same. If you give it properly in proper route and proper dose, the timing for cessation of seizure is same. So efficacy is same. And definitely the side effects are less in levetiracetam. So in 15 minutes, what we did, we usually in our hospital in PICU protocol, we usually a bit traditional, usually load on fosphenytoin if the virgin case. If the patient is already on levetiracetam or valproate, we usually load on levetiracetam. We usually try to avoid phenytoin. I am telling you later why we are trying to avoid phenytoin. We usually load with fosphenytoin with 30 milligram per kg within a rapid infusion within 8 to 10 minutes. Seizure ceased for 20 minutes after fosphenytoin. So this patient came with a status epilepticus, got 2 doses of benzo, seizure not controlled, transferred to PICU, got a phosphonitoin 30 milligram per kg seizure cease for 20 minutes. Now the tussle is between the phenytoin and phosphonitoin. 10 or 15 years back, we traditionally use phenytoin, but nowadays we have shifted from phenytoin to phosphonitoin because phosphonitoin basically is a pre-drug of phenytoin. There are multiple advantages of phosphonitoin over phenytoin. Like phosphonitoin, you can give a rapid infusion over 8 to 10 minutes without any side effects. But phenytoin, you have to give a slower infusion. If it's a rapid infusion, it can cause some kind of anemia. Phenytoin is a more venotoxic. There's a more chance of venous extravasation, and phosphonitoin is not that much of venotoxic, so lesser chance of venous extravasation. As well as phosphonitoin, even you can give until you get the raw phosphonitoin as IM. No slower acting, but it's available as IM. You can give it IM when there is no IV access. But phenytoin, you cannot give IM. Another deadliest complication of phenytoin is that the purple glove syndrome. Even if it is not extravasated to the outside, inside the vein, it can cause this purple glove syndrome. So purple glove syndrome is a deadliest complications of the intravenous phenytoin, even it is not extravasated. If there is extravasation, it can cause a severe necrotizing fasciitis and many complications are there. We have seen 2 or 3 complications. That's why phenytoin is out of fashion. We are using phosphonitoin. Rapid infusion, dissolving in 20 to 30 ml of non-malcinate within 8 to 10 minutes through a syringe pump, monitored. But after 20 minutes of cessation of seizure, after the phosphonitoin loading, again started any seizure. So this seizure again have been terminated. Tried to terminate with IV midazolam, but not terminated. So within first 15 to 20 minutes, 2 doses of benzo, 1 doses of phosphonitoin failed. So we landed in a condition of what we call refractory status epilepticus. So 2 different antiepileptic, one must be a benzo, has been failed irrespective of the time duration. So now we are landing in a case what is called the refractory status epilepticus. So the first seizure can be terminated up to 80% of cases by the 2 doses of benzo. Among the rest 20%, almost 10% has been terminated by a single antiepileptic drug loading, be it a phosphonitoin, be it a val, be it a lip, and 50% are ultimately leading to a refractory status epilepticus. So what we can do at this moment, and what are the options left for this refractory status epilepticus? So it is the time that we have to think about some investigations beyond the CVG and ABG and what's the next AD. So I am telling about the next AD. Basically, there are 2 concepts of thought. At 2 doses of bolus benzo, 1 dose of AD failed. So there are 2 options. Either you directly go to a midazolam infusion arm, or you go through a non-benzodiazepine AD arm. So in midazolam infusion arm, you directly start with a midazolam. You give a bolus of midazolam or lorozepam followed by start of midazolam. Usually start with a 2 microgram per kg per minute, then escalate it. I'm telling you later the protocol of midazolam infusion. If you are a bit scared about the midazolam infusion, that the respiratory depression will be there, PICU beds are not available, we cannot ventilate this patient, then you can go for a non-benzodiazepine AD arm. What are the drugs available? 3 drugs are there. Phosphonitoin, val, lip. If you use phosphonitoin previously, you can give a val on lip. If you use val, you can give phosphonitoin on lip. If you use lip previously, you can give phosphonitoin or valproate. But try to avoid valproate less than 1 year, less than 2 years, or where you are thinking that possibly there may be a metabolic cause or the patient has some illness. So try to avoid valproate in these cases. Otherwise, you can give valproate. But though we are thinking that midazolam can cause respiratory depression, we have given midazolam up to 6-7 microgram per kg per minute in a general ward without respiratory depression. Even if it causes respiratory depression and is a very short acting, if there is no renal impairment or hepatic impairment, very short acting, as soon as you stop the midazolam infusion, and if there's a respiratory depression, bradycardia or apnea, you just can do a bagging for 5 or 6 minutes and a respiratory drive will come back. So do not worry about the midazolam infusion arm. It depends upon your preference of choice. So what we have given in our case, we are a bit backdated, I think, or sometimes we prefer to give non-midazolam arm. After the 2 benzo, 1 phosphonitoin, we have loaded with a levitating system. Now, what should be the loading dose? Traditionally, in one, We used to load 40 milligram per kg, but in PIC we have already loaded 60 milligram per kg. 40 milligram per kg of loading liberatory system, left system is better acting than the 40 milligram per kg. We usually load 60 milligram per kg according to our PIC protocol. And we have sent the basic investigations, complete hemogram or CRP, electrolytes RFT. We have done a proper ABG because in emergency department we have done the capillary blood test. So these are other investigations that you need to know, that ionized total calcium, random sugar and sodium that should be seen in the emergency department. Then if there is anti-epileptic drugs are there, to go for the drug levels and the other routine investigations, and then your second line of investigations, you go for some EAG or EEG. So in 8 minutes, seizure continued in spite of this. So what we have given till today? Till 8 minutes, we have given 2 doses of benzo, then a load of phosphoripine, then a load of levetiracetam. Still, seizure continued. It may not be continued for the 8 minutes, but breakthrough seizure is there. So what next? So there is nothing left. You have to give the IV midazolam infusions. You have to give a loading midazolam, terminate the seizure, and start on midazolam infusion. And sometimes that even after giving a bolus of midazolam, you see that seizure is not being controlled even after the bolus midazolam. Then you can try with lorazepam. There is no as such theoretical evidence, but in a practical experience, you have seen that sometimes midazolam fails, but lorazepam is available. Lorazepam sometimes able to control the seizures. If you are not able to control the seizure, you can give a ketamine bolus. But at the time of ketamine bolus, be prepared with your intubation tray. And during this 1.5 hours, already within every 10 or 15 minutes, try to assess the A, B, and C. Try to assess the circulatory status. If the patient is in shock, give proper fluid resuscitation. You can start inotropes. Airway breathing should be evaluated every 10 to 15 minutes. And there must be a very low threshold of intubation. Within this 1.5 hours, at any moment you think that my airway and breathing is bad, it's not maintainable, do not wait, straightforward go for intubation. Till up to 1.5 hours, in our patient, seizure had not been controlled well. GCS is poor, but still airway and breathing was maintainable, circulatory status was good. So this is the flow chart that for status epilepticus, you have given a 2 benzo, 1 AD, not controlled, then refractory status epilepticus, not controlled, then ultimately you are going to the midazolam infusions. So what should be the protocol for midazolam infusion in refractory status epilepticus? As I told you, you have to give a bolus of 0.2 milligram per kg, then infusion at the rate of 1 to 2 microgram per kg per minute. We have a very good protocol for midazolam preparation in our ICU, so that if you run that preparation 1 ml per hour, it means that it is running as 1 microgram per kg per minute. Increasing 1 microgram per kg per minute every 5 to 10 minutes. You have to escalate the midazolam very early, 5 to 10 minutes, till seizure stops, up to a maximum of 16 to 24, it's not 242, 16 to 24 microgram per kg per minute. It has been shown that beyond 20 or 24, there is a tachyphylaxis. There is increased sedative action, but no anti-epileptic action. Larger initial bolus doses like 0.5 milligram per kg and more aggressive upward titration may result in further termination of the status epilepticus. What I usually follow, I usually do a 2 microgram per kg per minute. If not terminated in 4, 6, then 8. From 8, I usually prefer to jump to 12, 16, 20, 24. In the meantime, if any time I feel that patient needs to be intubated, I go for an intubation. Though the doses up to 36 microgram per kg per minute have been used, but most of the studies says that do not go beyond 24 to 25. Among the tapering must be done after at least 24 to 48 hours of seizure free. And if you are increasing the midazolam dose very rapidly, then you can go taper very rapidly from 24 to 20, 16, 12, 8, 6, 4, 2 off. Drawback of midazolam is the apparent increased propensity for seizure recurrence on track on tapering. You have seen whenever you want to taper the midazolam, it will increase the seizure recurrence and it develops tachyphylaxis after prolonged use, usually after beyond 48 hours of uses. So now we are going to a case of refractory status epilepticus. Definitely you have to do few investigations here. The most important investigation is the MRI brain. You have to do a MR imaging at this moment. So preferably before taking to the patient of MRI, again assess how is your airway, breathing and circulation. In PICU, when you are monitoring the patient, you can withhold intubation because you are watching under a monitor everything, that if any need is there, we can intubate this patient, you can give a fluid for them. But during transfer to the MRI department, you have to transfer for 10 minutes, then the MRI will be there for 20 to 30 minutes. You cannot maintain the airway inside the MRI room. You cannot intubate inside the MRI room. You cannot give a fluid bolus inside the MRI room. So it is preferable to intubate the patient before going to the MRI, and fluid resuscitation should be there, so that no catastrophe should happen during the transfer to the MRI department as well as during the MRI. So preferably to intubate this patient, secure the airway, then go to the MRI and do a MR imaging. Important is that during the MR imaging, two residents should be there. One should be inside the patient with a bagging. Usually prefer to do a bagging with a Mapleson C or Mapleson A with a long circuit. One resident should be sitting with the console and talk with the technician. At that moment, you should be in touch with the radiologist to see what the findings and what other sequence you need for a better delineation. Suppose you get a big infarct-like picture, you should do a MR angio or MR veno if needed. If you need a spectro, do the spectro. If you think that the meningitis varieties, go for a contrast. Because it is very difficult to shift the patient one and again from PICU to MRI. So what are the sequence you need? It is a DWI, it's a diffusion, it's a flare, it's a contrast, MRA, MRV, spectro. You do at a time, same time, because you cannot switch this patient multiple times from your PICU to MRI. And do not wait for the report for the next 24 to 48 hours, because you are dealing a case of refractory status epilepticus or a super refractory status epilepticus, and the MRI findings has some paramount importance there. So you try to get the MRI report, and then if there is no contraindication of lumbar puncture, even if your infectious parameters are negative, you have to go for a definitely CSF study, preferably after a ophthalmoscopy check and after giving a bolus of 3% saline or mannitol. You have to go for a lumbar puncture. It is very easy to do lumbar puncture when the airway has been secured. After 2 hours, there's a having breakthrough seizure in our case. Already we are planning for MRI. Intermittent bradypnea posturing was there. Midazolam is 6 microgram per kg per minute. What next? So definitely no doubt. 2 hours we have fought a lot. We have postponed the intubation preferably. We should have intubated this patient previously. Now, immediately 2 hours of fight, the seizure is continuing. There's a bradypnea, there's a posturing, and midazolam is high. So what next? Definitely you have to intubate the patient on ventilator. So intubation and ventilation of a status epilepticus patient is a 1 hour discussion, is the other topic. I am going very short. There are the indications that GCS less than 8 must be respiratory depression, either irregular jerky breathing or apnea, or fluid refractory shock, suspicion of rest, ICT, difficult to maintain airway. And if any asymmetry of the pupil you can find, or any depressed brainstem actions, reflexes are there, you have to intubate this patient. So what should be the intubation drug? Very short. Intubation drug must be with a midazolam bolus with a ketamine, and preferably with a muscle relaxant. Never scoline, always rocuronium. Before giving rocuronium, exclude the CICD condition, means cannot intubate, cannot ventilate condition. Exclude that airway is maintainable, airway is not bad, even airway is baggable. Then you give rocuronium, because after giving ketamine, the patient becomes too tight, laryngospasm is there, and sometimes intubation is difficult. But the patient is lethargic, patient is floppy, you may avoid giving muscle relaxant. If you want to give muscle relaxant, only rocuronium, no scoline. To put the patient on ventilation, usually a volume control mode of PRVC mode is preferable. Total volume 8 ml per kg. I time point. I am not going into details of the ventilation. A ventilation protocol is a very short, that liberal oxygenation to prevent the hypoxia. Neuroprotection and strict PCO2 around 35 mm of mercury. ETCO2 is a must. Volume mode of PRVC is the speed control of the minute ventilation, not to use very high PIP. And all the 16 to 18 protocols of neuroprotection that we follow in our ICU should be met. After 4 hours, we got the report. Almost all the reports are normal except the borderline raised CRP and low sodium. And PCO2 on the bit higher side, so to increase your ventilation to decrease your PCO2. After 5 hours, breakthrough seizures are still there. Already have increased the midas to 16, and there is a hypotension. So at that moment, what should be the blood pressure management and what should be the blood pressure therapy? Those who have worked in the PICU and maintained the neuroprotection, all you know, for neuroprotecting the child, we need to keep our MAP, mean arterial pressure, in the higher side. Because after this prolonged seizure, we expect that there must be some sort of rest ICT is there, even if there is no clinical picture is there. So in case of rest ICP, I need to maintain the cerebral perfusion pressure, that is CPP, in a good amount. And CPP usually basically MAP minus ICP. So you have to increase your mean arterial pressure. So blood pressure monitoring is very good. It's a meticulous blood pressure monitoring is crucial. Try to get an arterial line and IBP monitoring as soon as possible. Maintain the MAP on the higher side to maintain the cerebral perfusion pressure. Volume resuscitation is very cautiously. Assess whether this patient is volume responsive or not by non-invasive and invasive method, because to give a bolus to this patient means to give a bolus to the patient's brain and increase the chances of cerebral edema. Early use of vasoconstrictor is there because most of the cases the cardiac function is good, inotropy is good. You have given midazolam, so the peripheral vasodilatation is there. So the early use of vasoconstrictor should be there. Noradrenaline is the preferred drug of choice at this moment. Noradrenaline is sought to augment cerebral perfusion, increase flow velocity. And this is the target blood pressures. You have to keep your MAP above 90th centile according to the age, sex, and height. Usually keep on the higher side. Like we are doing in our PICU-1 patient, we are keeping the MAP on the higher side. If it is not spontaneously achieved, you have to give a smaller dose of noradrenaline. Now, as a patient entered in the refractory status epilepticus, definitely now you have to think that some sorts of cerebral edema is there, even if it's not showing, or rest ICT is there, even if it's not very much evident in the MRI brain. So now you have to go for some fluids and osmotherapy in these cases, because you are dealing with the case of refractory or super refractory status epilepticus. But definitely mannitol is out of fashion. We are giving a 3% saline. So what are the advantages of hypertonic saline over mannitol? It is as effective as mannitol for treatment for rest ICP in children. So efficacy wise, same. Plasma sodium up to 165 to 170 millimole per liter have been targeted to control ICP. We usually follow around 150 to 160 until and unless the brain is very tight or very edematous. Produce less rebound intracranial hypertension, contrasting feature with mannitol, which cannot be easily removed from the ICF. Does not cause obligatory osmotic diuresis and hence is likely to preserve or augment plasma volume rather than deplete it. Mannitol may precipitate acute renal failure and may not be excreted in oligonuria, where hypertonic saline is renoprotective. So there are lots of advantages of hypertonic saline. But before doing a lumbar puncture in these cases, we used to prefer to give a single dose of mannitol, 3 to 5 ml per kg, so that lumbar puncture will be more helpful and without any side effects. Now coming to what are the other drugs you have to use. So usually if you suspect that after the clinical pictures with or without MRI that some sorts of meningoencephalitis is there, you have to go for the AES protocol. Acyclovir, ceftriaxone, azithromycin. And never forget about scrub typhus and doxycycline if the seizure is IV azithromycin is as good as doxycycline. Definitely fluids, you have to use the isotonic fluid. There is a more role of 1/5 saline like Arolite P or Isolite P, or half DNS, you have to use a normal saline or DNS. How much usually a fluid restriction is there until and unless the patient needs some volume resuscitation or patient is hypotensive. Usually you go for 70%. Definitely neuroimaging, CT or MRI. MRI is preferable, no role of CT. Preferably as soon as possible you have to do the MRI if you are dealing a case of refractory status epilepticus. Before MRI, you go for a ARA protection. CSF, as I told, after MRI, preferably go for CSF. Then coming to the EEG, whether intermittent and continuous. So if you do an EEG when the patient is on midazolam infusion, you cannot get the very good EEG. Only you can get the alpha waves. The EEG will not determine everything. But if you are dealing a case of super refractory status epilepticus, or you are suspecting a patient is on non-convulsive status epilepticus, then you have to do a continuous EEG or the cerebral functional monitoring. But for this, you get a special instrument for that. Or you are dealing a case of super refractory status epilepticus, commence the patient on thiopentol or
Yeah, अच्छा
pentothal
तो
coma.
status ability मैंने सर.
I think there are few noises background. So you have to go for thiopentol coma or pentothal coma. At that moment, you have to do a continuous EEG for achieving the burst suppression. So these are the indications for continuous EEG monitoring: prolonged altered sensorium, polyneuropathy of clinical seizures, clinical suspicion of non-convulsive status epilepticus, all children receiving an IV anesthetic drug. So our patient MRI brain to be normal at 24 hours, started having breakthrough seizure even at a dose of midazolam of 25 microgram per minute. So definitely we are now landing into the super refractory status epilepticus. So what's in the name? It may be RSSE or maybe a Norcell-like new onset refractory status epilepticus. It may be a FIRS like febrile infection related epilepsy syndrome. It may be a DESC, devastating epileptic encephalopathy in school-age children. So whatever may be the cause, if you are getting a case of super refractory status epilepticus, and preferably your MRI brain is not showing too much structural abnormality, then anything can happen. There's a minor differences between all these etiologies, all these nomenclatures, but possibly you are dealing a case of immunological cause. So your threshold to give some immune therapy in the form of intravenous immunoglobulin or IV pulse methylprednisolone should be low whenever you are getting a case of refractory status epilepticus. So what are the options except the immunotherapy? AD are, so there are few options like anesthetic agent like thiopentol coma, propofol, ketamine or inasolar anesthetic. Or there are pyridoxine or magnesium sulfate. Or you can give some AD if not used. Laco or topiramide is preferable. Lacosamide is very much favorable in our ICU. You use lacosamide and sometimes you use topiramide. If you use topiramide, do not forget to load on topiramide for initial 48 hours, then start the maintenance. Sometimes we have seen that even if a very high dose of midazolam, seizure had not been controlled, you just load with topi and the seizure had been controlled. So after 26 hours, we have patient the common term thiopentol coma. So the thiopentol uses that it has tendency to lower the body temperature and the theoretical neuroprotective effects are there. It exhibits the zero order kinetics and due to rapid distribution have a profound tendency to accumulation, resulting in a long half-life in anesthesia and thus long recovery time. Hypotension and cardiorespiratory depression is there. So whenever you put the patient on thiopentol coma, be prepared with the inotropic agent with the IVP line. Hypotension will be the must. And increased chance of nosocomial infection is there. So do not go beyond 48 to 72 hours with a thiopentol infusion. Propofol for short molasses is good, but for pediatric people, there are propofol infusion syndrome we usually avoid until and unless short molasses are there. We usually do not give propofol infusion. Ketamine, short molasses are there. When the midazolam infusion is escalating, but seizure is not controlled, you can give those short molasses. But infusion of ketamine is there because it is potentially neuroprotective. As traditionally thought that it is a neurotoxic, but now the articles are coming on that it is a neuroprotective because of the strong N-methyl D-aspartate antagonistic actions. And there are few published data on the theoretical neurotoxic effect for the prolonged period, but all of them are now telling that it's a neuro effective if we use for 2 to 3 days. Other drugs are there, pyridoxine, MgSO4 and other new onset AEDs are there. There are few electrical and magnetic stimulation therapies like almost discovery channel therapies like transcranial magnetic stimulation, vagal stimulation, deep brain stimulation, electric convulsive therapy. I have never seen this. So whenever you are escalating your AED and correcting the reversible causes like sugar, calcium, magnesium, sodium infections, you have to think about these two things: immunotherapy and ketogenic diet. There should be a very low threshold of giving immunotherapy. You have got your Procare, CRP, TLC, CSF, blood culture, 24 hours negativity report and MRI brain. If you are quite sure that you are not dealing with infective encephalomyelitis or encephalitic syndrome, then you should go for a immunotherapy. So immunotherapy and ketogenic diet. So we have used ketogenic diet in a refractory status epilepticus, super refractory epilepticus in our PICU, and we got a very good result in an acute case. Is a ketodize the anti-epileptic as well as the anti-inflammatory actions, as well as the immunotherapy. There is a doubt that what should be the first line of choice of immunotherapy. I have searched a lot. Still today, The first line of therapy is the IV methylprednisolone and IV intravenous immunoglobulin. What we used to do previously is that you used to do IV methylprednisolone 30 milligram per kg per dose for 3 to 6 doses. If not controlled, then you go for the IV immunoglobulin. But now it has been told that you have to use both of these together. So total 5 days of IV methylprednisolone and 5 days of IV immunoglobulin. Wait for next 48 hours and see whether the patient is responding or not. If you're not able to use IVIG, then use Flex. Do not combine Flex with IVIG. Steroid plus IVIG with Flex. Go for 5 days, wait for another 1 or 2 days, not responding. Then the second line is like rituximab, cyclophosphamide there. I think still today, rituximab is not approved for the first line of drug as immunotherapy in a suspected or established autoimmune encephalitis or immune-mediated encephalitis. It must be a second line of choice. Already you have to send the autoimmune antibody panel. But most of the time, these CSF antibodies came negative. If the CSF antibodies come positive, no doubt, give methylpred IVIG, wait for 48 hours, not responsive, side by side, you can start with keto. If not responsive, then you go for a rituximab. But if the CSF autoantibodies came negative, in few of the cases, it's not possible to do all the branches of autoantibodies. Lots of autoantibodies are there, it's lots of cost. It's very much costliest. Even if a CSF antibody comes negative, you can go for a second MR imaging. If you see that the feature of suggestive autoimmune encephalitis, like the limbic involvement or hippocampal involvement. In our hospital, we have seen lots of cases that initial MRI is normal. After 7 or 7 days, the MRI brain is suggestive of autoimmune encephalitis. You preferably repeat an MRI. If you see the features of autoimmune encephalitis or immune-mediated encephalitis is there, even if your CSF autoantibody came negative, it is a case of autoimmune encephalitis. Preferably, all the infectious parameters like CSF, viral, PCR, and everything are negative. So you have to continue the immunotherapy. You continue the steroid for 4 to 6 weeks, and then preferably IV pulses of methylprednisolone. If any poor response, do not hesitate to switch to rituximab. You may repeat the autoantibody. Definitely, the CSF autoantibodies are more sensitive and specific than the blood autoantibodies. ICP monitoring, definitely, if you have the tool, if you have a neurosurgeon who is very much willing to put ICP monitor, in any case of super refractory status epilepticus, you have to go for a ICP monitor. So in our case, in 72 hours, the patient was commenced on thiopentol coma and the continuous EEG monitoring had been done. The patient was kept on burst suppression for 24 hours. Midas reduced first, followed by thio. There was no breakthrough seizures. Surprisingly, there was no nosocomial infection at the same time. Extubated on day 6. Steroid continued for 8 weeks, but the patient has severe sequelae. Repeat MRI was almost the same, but few changes in the hippocampal was there. Hippocampal edemas was there. Another third MRI after 8 weeks shows the diffuse brain syncate was there, and the patient has a sequelae. So this way, a patient coming to the first season to the emergency can ultimately slip into a refractory status epilepticus when 2 doses of Benjuva and 1 dose of AED failed. And this refractory status epilepticus after 24 hours of anesthetic agent when not effective, then ultimately slips into a super refractory status epilepticus, and there should be a low threshold for immunotherapy. So take home the first 2 doses of benzodiazepine, LURA or MIDA. If IV line is there, give IV. If no IV line, give a nasal. If LURA is available, give LURA. If MIDA is available, give MIDA. Then load either phospho-levi-val, whatever you have. If the patient was previously getting phospho-levi or val, give the same. If it is a virgin case, load anything what you have, phospho-levi-val, same. If failed, then go for a Midas infusion. Then titrate Mizart and try other AEDs, what you have not given, phospho-levi-val, lacotopy. Definitely search for the reversible causes like sodium, magnesium, calcium, glucose, and ammonia. Continuous EEG is preferable when you are going to the refractory or super refractory status epilepticus and you are planning to induce a thiopentone or barbiturate coma, or you are suspecting an NCS. Grossly normal MRI, it's not a ARI, grossly normal MRI or few subtle changes in like hippocampal edema, limbic changes, go for immunotherapy straightforward. Still today, first line of therapy, together use of pulse methylpred with IVIG, second line, is rituximab. Do not combine all this with Plex. If you are using Plex, do not use IVIG. You can combine some keto. Keto is a very good, effective in controlling the seizures, but it's costly. Sometimes it's some problem of indigestion is there. You have to monitor the blood ketone preferably. If not, then urine ketone. Keep the urine ketone 3+ or 4+. Definitely from the time of arrival to emergency department towards comments on the commencement of carpenter coma, you have to assess the patient meticulously for airway breathing circulation. And whenever you feel that I feel that airway is not maintainable, breathing is bad, do not hesitate to put the tube in. There should be a low threshold of intubation. Because if you can intubate, you can extubate at any moment. But it's preferable to intubate this patient a bit early rather than an emergency intubation. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Can I talk?
Yes, sir.
Nice presentation. How long you can wait for ventilation?
Sir, madam, at any moment, from coming to the emergency,
Okay.
any moment, whenever I feel that my airway breathing circulation is bad, I have to intubate. There is no time period.
Okay.
Even it is for 5 minutes to 5 hours to 5 days.
Okay.
মানে আমি স্টুডেন্টদেরকে পরীক্ষার জন্য কিংবা ওরালের জন্য বলবো A B C সেটা তো তুই বললি, D is the drugs, E is the environment which you missed, is that a patient whose a family whose child is convulsing and convulsing for long periods, the family outside has to be addressed to also. That's very important, that someone should come out and talk to the family. And the environment of a patient who is convulsing also has to be very calm and quiet. Then, as regards the fluid, you have said, but whether the restricting or maintenance, there is a controversy. So A, B, C, D, and then E is the environment, F is the fluid, and G is glucose. You need to see that time to time because it can go either way. And last is the intervention, that intubation and other interventions has to be done. So that's in gross that I say that A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And age. Some patients can go into hypothermia, some patients can go into hyperthermia after the seizures. So the hyperthermia has to be also addressed to.
Any questions from the residents? New first years, old first years?
তুই প্রবাসী স্ক্রিন শেয়ারিংটা বন্ধ কর, স্ক্রিন শেয়ারিংটা বন্ধ কর।
Acha.
Can I pass a comment?
Yes.
Hello,
বল।
can I pass a comment?
Yes.
Regarding the advantage of fosphenytoin over phenytoin, definitely fosphenytoin is better tolerated. It does not produce significant hypotension and there is no infusion site reaction. But the risk of arrhythmias and QTC prolongation is, I mean, very high also in case of fosphenytoin as like phenytoin. So fosphenytoin is not absolutely safe.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the two main advantage of fosphenytoin is that its pH is much lower than the phenytoin.
Yeah, naturally.
Whereas
Yes,
the
naturally.
pH of phenytoin is around 11, the fosphenytoin is much lower. So that's one
Sure.
advantage.
Definitely, you
And,
can
it
infuse
be
it
given
glucose.
3 times
Yeah.
faster.
Yeah,
But
sure.
if your patient is also having some renal problem, you need to
Yeah.
calculate that phosphate load, which the phosphenytoin will be liberating.
Yes, yes.
That's
of course.
again very important point one should consider.
Mhm. Prabhas, can I pass one more comment? Hello.
Hi, sir.
Bulchi, there is another entity which is known as post-convulsive non-convulsive status epilepticus.
Yes,
What
sir.
happens? What happens in case of a prolonged convulsive seizure? Sometimes the body fails to maintain the motor activity. So often the patient goes into a non-convulsive phase with occasional focal twitches like a facial twitch or limb twitch. But the EEG, electrocardiographically, there is a continuous seizure. So that's a non-convulsive seizure by definition, but that occurred after a convulsive seizure. So it's a post-convulsive, non-convulsive status epilepticus. এই দুটোই আর কিছু না।
প্রভাস,
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
এডিশন অফ থায়ামিন, বায়োটিন, এগুলো
এগুলো ইউজুয়ালি যদি আমরা খুব স্মল
মাইটোকন্ড্রিয়াল ককটেল,
ইউজুয়ালি লেস দ্যান 1 ইয়ার কিড পেলাম, একটা ব্যাকগ্রাউন্ড হিস্ট্রি অফ ডেভেলপমেন্টাল ডিলে আছে, সাসপিশন অফ মেটাবলিক ডিজিজ আছে, এইসব পেশেন্ট গুলোর ক্ষেত্রে ইফ ইউ গেট এনি রিফ্রাক্টরি স্ট্যাটাস এপিলেপটিকাস লোড উইথ thiamine, pyroxine and biotin.
Not much useful in the acute phase, in the status phase.
Definitely.
You can give them as maintenance, not
Maintenance.
much useful in the status case.
Neonatal seizures এ বোধহয় বেশি ইউজফুল।
পাইরোক্সিন, হ্যাঁ, পাইরোক্সিন ডিপেন্ডেন্সি হলে আর কিছুতে কমবে না
সেটা, but that you'll have to document by doing a continuous EEG. You'll have to suppress the bursts. EEG তে যে pyridoxine dependent seizures গুলো usually present with myoclonic seizure. So সেইখানে তোমাকে দেখাতে হবে by giving pyridoxine infusion that the myoclonus of the discharges in the EEG they are suppressed. That is the diagnostic. Just clinically বললে হবে না কিন্তু।
আমরা কি মানে burst suppression পর্যন্ত করব তো, মানে giving the
anesthesia দিতে গেলে থায়াবেন্ডার দিলে তো burst suppression করতেই হবে, মানে সেটাই তো আমাদের কাট অফ। থায়াবেন্ডার দিলে তো burst suppression করতেই হবে।
burst suppression 24 ঘন্টা রেখে তারপর তুলতে হবে।
এই চ্যাটে প্রসেনজিতের একটা কোশ্চেন আছে,
এটা স্যার অ্যানসার দিয়ে দিয়েছি।
একটা ওই নন কনভালসিভ স্ট্যাটাসের যতগুলো কাজ হচ্ছে সেটাতে কিন্তু মানে ম্যাক্সিমাম ট্রায়াল গুলো দেখা যাচ্ছে ফসফেনিটয়েন ভার্সেস ল্যাকোসামাইড, এবং ল্যাকোসামাইড হ্যাজ বিন ফাউন্ড
ল্যাকো খুব উঠছে এখন,
খুব উঠছে। আর সুপার রিফ্র্যাক্টরি স্ট্যাটাস এপিলেপটিক্স একটা নিউ ড্রাগ আসছে which is a GABA A modulator, which is called brexanolone. Brexanolone নিয়ে অনেক ট্রায়াল হচ্ছে পৃথিবীতে বিভিন্ন জায়গায়। It has been found to be a very good GABA A modulator that can help in reducing the discharges in super refractory status epilepticus. Other than ketamine, isoflurane ওগুলো বাইরে। Brexanolone ভালো ড্রাগ।
যে মিডাজোলামের হাফ লাইফটা যেহেতু only few seconds, it's very safe. And lorazepam-এর যেহেতু area of distribution-টা খুব কম into the brain, so it has got a much longer action. So I would always prefer lorazepam as the first line drug rather than any other diazepam.
না, এটা কিন্তু ডিপেন্ড করে অপূর্বদা, মানে the site, I mean your location. If you are in the NICU or PICU, you can jolly well start with lorazepam. But if you are in a place where you don't have the facility of ventilatory support and others, I think Prabhash is right. We should go for midazolam first.
Onta?
In hospital settings,
out of hospital,
always midazolam.
Always
Midazolam.
Midazolam.
Always.
Midazolam. Out of hospital, always midazolam. কিন্তু যেগুলো কম্পারিজন হয়েছে না, nasal midazolam-এর কিন্তু বেশি কম্পারেটিভ স্টাডি নেই।
আচ্ছা স্যার,
আজ কম আছে, কিন্তু বাতকাল মিডাজোলাম এন্ড ইন্ট্রামাসকুলার মিডাজোলামের এই আউট অফ হসপিটাল স্টাডিটা বেশি।
স্যার নাজালের এখন প্রচুর স্টাডি এসছে স্যার,
এখন আসছে বিকজ নাজাল এসছে আগে, কিন্তু
রেট অফ অ্যাবজর্পশন সবারই সমান মোটামুটি।
অ্যাকচুয়ালি বলা হয় চ্যানেল করো, প্রিপেয়ার করো, তারপর দাও, তারপর অ্যাকশন হবে। তাতে কত সময় লাগে? আলটিমেটলি নাজাল মিডাজোলামের সেম সময় লাগে।
না প্লাস যেটা কি
আবার চ্যাটে দু একটা কোশ্চেন আছে, দেখ প্রসেনজিতের একটা কোশ্চেন আছে, ওটার উত্তর দে।
আচ্ছা, is there any role of EEG in
চ্যাটে কোশ্চেন আছে, দেখ
চ্যাটে উত্তর দিলাম।
অনেক সময় তো কনভার্সন হয় না, অত EEG তে পাওয়া যায়, কোনো রোল আছে?
সেটাই তো প্রভাস বল।
শোন, ভ্যালপ্রয়েডের লোডিং ডোজ নিয়ে পরীক্ষার সময় একটা কন্ট্রোভার্সি হয়েছিল এমডি। হোয়াট ইজ ইওর টিচিং, হোয়াট ইজ দ্য কনভেনশনাল টিচিং, হোয়াট ইজ দ্য লোডিং ডোজ অফ ভ্যালপ্রয়েড?
ভ্যালপ্রয়েড 40 মিলিগ্রাম পার কেজি।
আমাদের ছেলেরা 40 বলছিল, এক্সটার্নাল কেউ একজন আপত্তি, আমি বললাম আমাদের এখানে কিন্তু 40 দেয়া হয়, মানে এমডি পরীক্ষার সময় এটা কনফিউশন হচ্ছে। ভ্যালপ্রয়েডের তো লোডিং ডোজ তো 40 দেয়া হয়,
40 ডি 20 বিডি।
আমাদের ছেলেরা তাই বলেছে।
So, one question to Swapanda. Hello, am I audible?
হ্যাঁ বল।
Cerebral folate deficiency কি স্ট্যাটাস নিয়ে আসতে পারে? যাতে পাইরোক্সিল ফসফেট সেটাই হবে, নালে কন্ট্রোল হবে না।
ওগুলো তো ক্রনিক কেস, ক্যালসিফিকেশন, I don't know, মানে cerebral folate deficiency তে calcifications in the brain, they are developmentally delayed, they are much chronic cases.
ক্যালসিফিকেশন কেন হয় ফলেট ডেফিসিয়েন্সি?
They are one of the features. I don't know কেন হয়।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা
সব যদি মনে রাখতে পারবো তাহলে তো হয়েই গেছিল।
আমরা তো তাই মনে করি আপনাকে।
Cerebral folate deficiency তে calcification স্যার। আপন কিছু বলবি?
আর এনকেএইচ
non-ketotic hyperglycemia, more of a newborn convulsion, not in the older child, not in the older child.
This is a situation where all antiepileptic will not work until unless you have given Benadryl syrup.
If I get a 40-year-old Nelson, I can show you that there were it was written that you can give 30 milligram of diazepam, and I have given a child of 10 kg 30 milligram of diazepam and the baby survived. কিন্তু তখনকার নেলসনে সেটা লেখা ছিল, তারপরের নেলসন থেকে আর সেটা পাই না। প্যারালডিহাইডের রোলটা কি এখনো কিন্তু কিছু কিছু আর্টিকেলে প্যারালডিহাইডের কথা লেখা আছে।
मैं तो প্যারালডিহাইড কোনদিন ইউজ করিনি আজ অবধি।
আমরা তো ইউজ করেছি, আমরা তো অনেক ইউজ করেছি, স্বপন নিশ্চয়ই ইউজ করেছি। আমরা তো প্যারালডিহাইড অনেক ইউজ করেছি, কারণ আমাদের সময় তো ফর্মুলাই ছিল, মানে কিছুদিন আগে পর্যন্ত, এখন তো অনেক ড্রাগ এসছে যে ডিডিপিপি, give first dose of diazepam, second dose of diazepam, then according to age either you give phenobarbital or phenytoin, and then the last was paraldehyde. কিন্তু আমি ভেবেছিলাম it is absolutely obsolete, কিন্তু এখনো কোনো কোনো জায়গায় লেখা আছে paraldehyde.
Is there কোনো question? New first years.
Hello sir. Hello. Sir, that we should maintain a low threshold for intubation, and GCS less than 8 is an indication. So many times we have found in the emergency that especially in case of febrile status epilepticus, that around the time of status, the GCS is usually low. And but after giving midazolam or lorazepam, it improves. So how should we assess that whether intubation in that case is needed or not?
No, actually GCS less than 8 is not only the sole indication of intubation. Even if you give a good dose of prednisolone for doing an MRI for a kid, the kid will be completely sleepy. And the GCS, if you calculate the GCS will be less than 8, so we're going to intubate this patient. It's not like that. You have to assess everything. That the type of the disease, where you feel that this patient will be difficult to control, not typical of a febrile seizure. The airway, what is the airway? The stridor is there or not? Is it posturing or not? Airway is maintainable or not? Lots of secretion is there or not? And GCS is poor or not? Everything you have to correlate with everything. So if everything is there, then you have to intubate. It's not only the GCS less than 8. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, another question is that before starting midazolam infusion in the case of refractory status epilepticus, is there any role of giving a half-loading dose of levetiracetam, phenytoin?
There is no concept of half-loading. There's no half-loading has been obsolete. There is no concept of half-loading. You only have to give loading of any AED as a either a left or van or for phenytoin. Then after 2 doses of benzo and 1 dose of AED is not controlled, either you go for a AED arm or midazolam infusion arm. There is no role of half-loading. You have to give a complete full loading. When we are PGs in 12 years, 13 years back, we have seen the half-loading concept is there, but there is no role of half-loading in recent studies.
Half-loading আমরা করি না, but one of the best drug in our time is the midazolam, and you can increase it. You can increase it till it is a midazolam coma.
And usually
midazolam you need to intubate. For that you need to.
Midazolam infusion is very safe. For 4 to 6 of the infusion the ward রাখতে পারি without the fear of airway compromise, coma or airway compromise.
আটো লেখা আছে 8 পর্যন্ত সেফলি যাওয়াতে পারে, তারপর you should have the facilities for intubation and ventilation.
Sir, in emergency, we in many times we face that establishing and IV cannula is not possible, and we use intranasal midazolam, and for that we have higher concentration of midazolam is required, special preparation of midazolam is required. If it is not available, can we use the available injection
Yes.
midazolam?
Yes, when our time the midazib or NSAID nasal spray was not available, we used the normal midazolam. Normal midazolam that is available, the IV midazolam, that 1 mg in 1 ml or 5 mg in 5 ml. We used to give that in a buccal, not nasal. Because of the buccal, nasal you have to give a smaller volume, but buccal you can give a larger volume. We have used the buccal and we have given the IM as well.
So in that case, if order of preference, it should be buccal, more preferable than intranasal.
Buccal followed by, if the IV access is difficult, if you don't have that special nasal preparation, the order of choice should be buccal followed by intramuscular.
Intramuscular, okay.
Intramuscular.
Yeah.
But intramuscular should be undiluted. You cannot dilute midazolam. It will be a huge
অনেক সময় কি হয়, practically একটা convulsing বাচ্চার নাকটাকে ধরে তার মধ্যে দেওয়া is not that easy, practical problem. So in that case, the intramuscular midazolam or intramuscular fosphenytoin, if you don't have the cannula or you are not been able, then intramuscular midazolam and intramuscular fosphenytoin is quite good.
There is a recent study that have compared with the intravenous LAVE versus IM levetiracetam. So both the LAVE as IV and IM, they have compared that levetiracetam also can be given as IM.
যেটা ব্লাডে দেওয়া যাবে সেটা তো মাসেলে দেওয়াই যাবে।
IM midazolam কিন্তু খুব ভালো একটা অপশন, খুব ভালো অপশন।
হ্যাঁ, IM midazolam স্যামুয়েলের থিসিস, স্যামুয়েল যখন ডিএনবি করছিল তখন স্যামুয়েলের থিসিস ছিল আমার আন্ডারে ইন্ট্রাভেনাস আর ইন্ট্রামাসকুলার মিডাজোলাম এন্ড ইন্ট্রামাসকুলার ফসফেনিটয়েড।
আরেকটা জিনিস যেটা হচ্ছে, if you are prepared with the intubation tray, you can give IM ketamine as well in emergency department, but you have to prepare with the intubation tray. এতে মাঝে মাঝে এত ল্যারিঙ্গোস্পাজম করে রেসপিরেটরি ডিপ্রেশন করে দেয়, মুশকিল হয়ে যায়, বাট ketamine is a very good control the seizure.
মেমব্রেন স্টেবিলাইজার, ketamine is a membrane stabilizer.
খুব ভালো,
তার জন্য ব্রঙ্কিয়াল অ্যাজমা খুব ভালো কাজ হবে। মাসল প্যারালাইসিস।
What is the most common cause of status epilepticus, TGTs?
Febrile seizures.
What is the next most common? Is the remote symptomatic. রিমোট সিম্পটোমেটিক জানিস তো, মানে ধর হয়তো একটা বার্থ অ্যাসফিক্সিয়া হয়েছিল, তখন কিছু হয়নি, তারপরে সেটা অনেক পরে হলো আর কি, প্রেজেন্টেশন হলো, এপিলেপসি, দ্যাট ইজ কল্ড রিমোট
সিম্পটোমেটিক এপিলেপসি। ইনফেকশন ছাড়িয়ে গেছে, ইনফেকশন 3 নম্বর।
ইনফেকশন তো অত বেশি না এখন। Any more questions? Extensively covered.
আচ্ছা, প্রসেনজিৎ একটা প্রশ্ন করেছে যে একটা পেশেন্ট, if you have a child with a seizure disorder having levetiracetam at 60 mg per kg per day, what would be the loading AED and dose of levetiracetam? Any role of loading dose of levetiracetam? Very good question. এটা আগে আমি বললাম, if any child was on previous AED, preferable to give this AED. এখন যদি পেশেন্টটা 60 mg per kg per day levetiracetam পেয়ে থাকে, তার মানে হাইয়েস্ট ডোজে পাচ্ছে। There are few studies that is showing that you can go up to 80 mg per kg per day. অনেকে 80 mg ও দেয়, সাউথে আমি দেখেছি নিভান্সে 80 mg ও দেয় অনেকে পেশেন্টকে। তো যদি পেশেন্টটা কোনো ডোজ মিস না করে থাকে, তাহলে প্রেফারেবলি ওকে আমরা একটা লোয়ার ডোজে লোড করব, 30 to 40 তে লোড করব। যদি ডোজ মিস করে গিয়ে থাকে তাহলে 60 লোড করব, এবং তারপরে ইউজুয়াল যেটা ডোজ সারা দিনে 60 সেটা দেব।
Ten times more potent than levetiracetam, তার নেক্সট মলিকুল আসছে বাজারে, বিভারাসিটাম। 10 times potent than
বিভারাসিটাম।
হ্যাঁ,
ওদের এসে গেছে,
পাইরাসিটাম থেকে, পাইরাসিটামের ডেরিভেটিভ সব।
এখন এগুলো সবই গিমিক, সব আসবে একটা একটা করে যাবে।
ভালো, খুব ভালো হয়েছে প্রভাস।
থ্যাংক ইউ।
ফ্লেভার অফ ICH একাডেমিক্স।
প্রভাস খুব ভালো হয়েছে, অনেকদিন বাদে শুনলাম স্ট্যাটাস এপিলেপটিকাস।
ওকে, ছুটি নাকি এবারে
বেরিয়ে গেলাম, ওকে বেরিয়ে গেলাম।
প্রভাস ঠিক আছে, চালিয়ে যাও।